Welcome, everyone. And while this isn't technically Crypto Cove, this is definitely a nice little hangout with all of us here. Again, welcome you all to the call, and I'm glad to be here with you all tonight. Now, I'm not going to bury the lead. This call is a showcase for the improvements that have been made to my tooling website, which I'll show you is okay, this is in the way. And my tooling website is now in version 1.1. You can see down here. So yeah, that's definitely pretty nice, what you all say.
Yes.
And indeed, we're going to be spending some time going over the improvements on this call. But first, let's go over a bit of history for anyone here who isn't aware of what I'm talking about. Now, back in late August, MetaMask had an issue where it wouldn't allow you to import our tokens manually at all. What would happen is you would put in the token contract address where you're meant to put that in, and it would not show you the token information at all. Where it would show is it would show a GMO data and would not allow you to move forward with the import. So that was an issue. It turned out to be an RPC issue, but at the time, it was definitely an issue for a lot of users that needed a quick fix. And with that, we moved to maybe providing a tool that allowed users to import all of our tokens at one point, just with a click of a few buttons. And let me go ahead and show you what the first iteration of that looks like. So at first I had a blog site here that had a add all tokens to MetaMask button. Now this still exists, but it's been depreciated in favor of a new tool host. But at the time, this was actually a site that I had just on standby because I had originally thought that I would put my guides and everything else up on a blog site before I decided to put it on a Google Drive folder. So I just had this laying around and decided to come up with some other use for it, basically. So that's how that came to be. And it wasn't long after I launched this that another user pointed out to me that with something like this in place, that could actually streamline getting people onboarded into pool funding because usually when you import custom tokens into MetaMask, what you have to do is open up MetaMask and then you have to go to the three dots here, click there, then click import tokens. And since we have custom tokens that aren't on any major exchanges or anything of the sort, what we would have to do is we would have to click custom token. We would have to paste in the token contract address. Then we would scroll down, click next, and then we would be able to confirm the token adding procedure. Fairly straightforward, but it definitely takes up quite a bit of time. And definitely more so when you have 5 tokens to import. When you all say?
Hmm.
So that's where my tool came in because it allowed you to import all of our tokens in just a couple clicks: PFI, PFB, PFS, PFG, and PML. And later on, by popular request, I ended up adding in USDT as well, so people didn't have to import that one. So before we go any further, is there anyone here that's used that tool before that I wrote up?
Hmm. Me.
Excellent.
Oh, wait. Is that the token tool?
Yes, that's the token adding tool.
I use it every day.
Excellent. And what do you say about it? Do you have any feedback on it? How has it been for you?
Oh, it's been great. So you don't have to manually go into your notes or wherever you've stored the token addresses, the contracts. and then paste them in because that's so annoying. You just need to click one button and then
Hmm.
click it a couple of times to add all the tokens.
That's
And
right.
that's how easy it is.
That's right. That's been a major time and effort saver for a lot of people in the community. The the different leaders of the community and the executive team alike. I get quite a bit of feedback from both of those groups that it's a fantastic tool. So that's fine as far as it goes. And indeed, this blog site was fine as far as it went, but there's just a lot of clutter here, as everyone here can see. There's a lot of stuff here that really isn't necessary to what I'm trying to do here. And there's quite a bit that it turned out confused people quite a bit. And there's only so much that you can put over here in the sidebar. So that hinders me if I try to expand my offerings here in any way, shape, or form. So not a very ideal situation when you all say. All right. So anyway, with that in mind, I decided to move over to a different tool host, that being a GitHub page. And here's why I started adding more and more to my offerings here, because we started out with just the token adding tool, and then we moved over to also allowing for different RPC changes when we started seeing issues with that in the community with MetaMask. And it's definitely grown out quite a bit since then. So for anyone who isn't aware how this works is that you click this button and it prompts you with a token adding suggestion in MetaMask to add all of our custom tokens. We'll be showing that in just a bit because improvements has actually been made to that. It's a similar situation here with the Switch Binance Smart Chain RPC buttons. Now here we have buttons that allow you to, like the name suggests, switch the RPC that your MetaMask installation is using. If something has happened to the RPC node that you're using, like for example, say if Llama RPC is down, you can quickly switch over to public node. And what happens there is you click on public node, and then MetaMask pops up with a request to update BNB chain. You approve that request, and then you're off to the races. So that's a pretty streamlined way of changing your RPC. Before we had these buttons, we used to have to change the RPC manually, which I definitely had a guide walking people through that step by step, but it was definitely a bit tedious and time consuming, as anyone who followed the guide can probably tell you. And that manual method is indeed still available in that guide, but this automatic method is certainly the one I recommend to most people. So I'd say that's definitely been helpful. Has anyone used this particular feature before? No? Okay. Well, moving on. The next section of the website is in regards to donations that people can make to me. This is pretty self-explanatory. We have options for donating BNB, USDT, or PML. I cannot accept any of the other pool funding tokens that we use, so I can't accept PFI, PFB, PFS, or PFG. And then on the last section here, we have community documents. And if we click on this button here, it takes us to the Google Drive share that I have with all the different documents that I've written for the community. There's quite a bit in here, as you can see, and yeah, there's plenty to read. So that's just a bit of history for you. That's where we've been. So before we move forward, does anyone have any questions about that so far? All right, Manaya, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
It's Mahina. Um,
Manaya. Sorry.
but I was just wondering, do you get notified every time someone's wallet connects on there?
No.
Oh, that's good because mine would be annoying.
Yeah, it's definitely set up to pretty much just be a static site at this point. So it's pretty bare bones, relatively speaking. And yeah, that's just the way I like it because that definitely helps with people accessing the websites and so that everything you need is all in one place there. So yeah, does anyone have any other questions about any of that before we move on to the changes that have been done? No? All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to the changes. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. And the first change, which some of you might have noticed when we were looking at this feature just a minute ago, is that under the Community Documents tab, I now have quick links to some of my most popular documents. So we have the Common Problems Guide, which takes you directly to the Common Problems document I have. And it's a similar story with the newbies guides that I have. Now, my newbies guides come in two flavors. There's the general newbies guide, which is what you would want to send to people who read if you're a newcomer and you're self-funding your pool funding accounts just right out of the gate. And then we have the 777 newbies guide, and that's if your referral is coming in through the 777 giveaway and you're paying the way forward for the first week. There's a few changes between the guides because there's definitely a few things that have to be taken into consideration for each type. Like, for example, if you're paying your referrals way in for the first little while, then they won't have to be concerned about buying B&B until a bit later on in their journey. Whereas if they're coming in and self-funding, then they have to be concerned about purchasing B&B pretty much right then and there. Makes sense? All right, so the next
Yes, it makes
change,
sense.
yeah,
Makes sense.
thank you. All right, so the next change, and we'll go back up to the add all tokens button, is that the token suggestion logic has been retooled to add USDT and our custom tokens in the same prompt. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate that by clicking the add all tokens button. And one other change that's been made is I've added a browser prompt here to hopefully explain a bit more about what's going on to the user so they know what needs to be done, especially if they're someone completely new to crypto. So we'll go ahead and click OK. And MetaMask will pop up with the add suggestion tokens request. And as you can see here, we can see a token suggestion for PFB, PFI, PFS, USDT, PML, and PFG. So that's all six of the tokens that we use, including USDT, which indeed wasn't a separate prompt before, but with that browser OK button, that also allowed me to change the timing on when the token suggestion was fired so that I could just pack them all into one suggestion. So that's helped streamline operations quite a bit. So I'll go ahead and click on add token. and all my tokens are already there, but if they weren't before, they would be here now. And we can also see one other thing that my tool allows you to do that manually importing does not, is it allows you to see at the actual token icons. Now, these are taken from the Pool Microlending website, and I just add them into the token adding logic. So that makes the entire setup here look a bit prettier and hopefully look just a little bit more professional. And this also works if you have all the tokens already, but you don't have the token icons. So if you see a question mark here or a random abstract icon, then this helps you to add the custom token icons as well. It won't make any changes to your wallet itself at that point. So the only change in that case would be cosmetic. It would just be adding the icons. Alrighty, so the next change I want to go over here, and I have a list here in case you were wondering why I'm looking at. Okay, so the next change is definitely more to be more mobile friendly. Let me go over to my screenshot I have here. Now, for any mobile users of my tools, I've heard you loud and clear. I've moved the donation buttons from the top of the screen to their very own buttons down below, which we saw. So that should hopefully make the browsing of my tooling website on the mobile version, either of MetaMask or even if you're just browsing it on your regular mobile browser for whatever reason. So that should make going to the website easier for those on mobile, hopefully. So yeah, I'd say that was a pretty good change. And what do you all think of the changes we've made so far?
Good. Good changes.
Thank you. All right, we'll go over the last change. And in response to the Cloudflare outage that's happened fairly recently, there is now a dedicated section of my RPC switcher for RPC options that do not rely on Cloudflare. In this case, we can see we have BLXR, DRPC, and ChainStack. So again, these do not rely on Cloudflare. So if we have another Cloudflare outage again, you can use these without having to go through a bunch of different RPCs that may or may not work for you. So that's definitely been a pretty good usability improvement. And I definitely had some ideas for adding more dedicated sections here for different RPC options that do not rely on the big cloud providers like Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services or anything of the sort. So that's definitely been the pipeline, but once it's added, I definitely say we'll be in pretty good shape for if any sort of outage happens. Anything. So someone's got a major echo here. Let me see if I can see what it is. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, ultimately my plan with the RPC switcher is to add several different sections here that denotes RPC options that are free from the big internet cloud services. So that way, no matter which one is having an outage, if there's an outage, you can still change your RPC to something that should work for you. So that's just a little something in the pipeline. And I indeed have quite a bit more in the pipeline that I do want to talk a bit about with you all. Now, of course, this is all subject to change, and I don't have any sort of timelines for these, either firm or not so firm. But the first thing that I want to do is make a light version of this tooling website that strips everything down to its absolute bare bones. And this is going to be something that will be ideal for bad connections or low spec devices. And I actually have a bit of a mock-up of that right now that I created just on the fly. And as you can see, with this bit of tooling, we'll have the Connect Wallet button, then we'll have the Add Tokens button, then we'll have the RPCs and the Donate button. But as you can see, there's really not much else of anything there. There's just those buttons, and that's just about it. Because ultimately, my plan for this version is that it's going to rely on older HTML tricks and different components of older versions of CSS to allow for older and low spec devices to access my tooling without any trouble. And of course, this is also going to save on bandwidth to the point where even the worst connections can probably access this bit of tooling without much of any issue. So I'm pretty excited for that coming hopefully soon. And that's about all I had for the show and tell, but a couple other things that I have in mind for later on is a dark mode for my tooling website. Now, the harsh backgrounds, the white background that you see on the main tooling websites, in fact, let me go ahead and share it again so you all can see what I'm talking about. Now, this isn't as bad as on some other websites, but if you're in a dark room or in a really dimly lit spot, then you might see some harsh screen glare from all this white here. Although, again, it's not as bad as on some other websites, but it can definitely be improved upon, wouldn't you say? So with that, at some point, I'm also going to add a dark mode to this website, and it'll definitely be in the form of a toggle, perhaps in the upper right corner. To when you flip that, it'll either invert the colors or add on an entirely separate new different color sets to essentially be better for darker environments around you. So that way you don't have as much screen glare. And of course, we also have several people that just prefer dark mode for one reason or another. I am indeed one of those people, so no judgment here, folks. All right, so the next thing I have on the list of things that I definitely want to add at some point is some accessibility improvements to the website because right now there's not really much in terms of accessibility. Of course, the buttons are fairly big, so that helps a little bit, but there's no alt text or anything of the sort on the buttons. So if you're either blind or your vision is impaired, then that makes it more difficult to use my website. And unfortunately, that's just the case for a lot of Web3 in general. It's that unfortunately, of course, with a emerging technology, you don't see much improvements for anyone who's visually impaired for quite some time. We're starting to see Web3 go a bit in that direction, but it's nowhere near where it needs to be for the blind or visually impaired to really use a Web3 services without too much of any issues. So I'm going to be the change that I want to see in the world with that by making my website a bit easier to use for the visually impaired. And hopefully that will go out like little ripples in the ponds, either just improving my bit of tooling or hopefully spanning out into more Web3 architecture. All right, and the last bits that I definitely want to add at some point. Now, these are definitely going to come much later. The first thing that I want to add much later on is a cross-chain swap tool on my website, so that if you accidentally bought USDT on the Ethereum chain, then what you can do is you can swap that to USDT on the Binance Smart Chain. If you have Bitcoin, you can swap that to USDT on the Binance Smart Chain as well. You can swap pretty much anything to anything you need. Of course, I won't be supporting our tokens, unfortunately, because I don't want to encourage selling of those at any point, and that's what swap is. It's a sell ultimately. All right, so the last thing that I want to do in regards to something that's way off in the horizon is moving my GitHub page off of GitHub's infrastructure and onto some paid cloud infrastructure for the website. And at that point, I'm also going to more fully integrate my guides with the website so that everyone can access everything in just one place. And that way I can reduce my reliance on big corporations because with a GitHub page, I'm ultimately reliant on Microsoft. And with the Google Drive folder share, I'm ultimately reliant on Google allowing that. So I definitely want to move away from that if I can. Now, I'm not there yet. That's definitely going to take a bit of doing and a bit more funding from different sources before I can even think about doing that. But that's where I want this to go, and that's where I want this to head. Make sense, everyone?
Yep, to me it does.
Yeah. And with that in mind, I'm definitely going to get there as best as I can for the community and for pool playing as a whole. Of course, with the community's help, I can hopefully get there faster and easier. So if you find any of the tooling that I provide to the community helpful, then donations to my wallet address are greatly appreciated. I'll go ahead and put that in the chat now. And we also have the donation buttons on the tooling website for you to donate at a point if you so choose. Donations absolutely help, and I definitely want to give a big thank you to everyone who's donated already because your support really helps more than you might think. All right, with that, I've gone through just about everything that I wanted to go through for this call. So, does anyone have any questions, comments, anything of the sort? No? Did I do my job too well again?
Yep.
Yeah. All righty. So, with that, if there's no comments or questions, I'll go ahead and stop the recording.